The day I discovered my mother had left me a fortune was the same day I realized I'd been sleeping in a storage closet for 6 months while my aunt wore designer clothes bought with money that was legally mine. My name is Sophia Brown, and this is the story of how my own family turned me into their live-in servant after my mother's death, how they stole my inheritance while convincing me I was worthless, and how one hidden letter transformed me from the girls scrubbing their floors into the woman who owned everything they'd ever wanted. But more importantly, this is the story of what happened when those same relatives who treated me like garbage came crawling back months later, broke and desperate, begging for the mercy they never showed me. And the single sentence I delivered that made them understand exactly what they'd lost when they chose cruelty over compassion. It started the day my mother died. Not the actual moment she passed, which was quiet and peaceful in a hospice room where I held her hand and whispered that I loved her until her last breath left her body. But the day after the funeral, when reality hit like a freight train and I realized I was 17 years old, completely alone, and had nowhere to go. My mother, Catherine Brown, had raised me by herself my entire life. No father in the picture.
No siblings.
Just her and me against the world, and we'd been happy.
Poor but happy.
She worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, always making sure I had what I needed even when it meant she went without. She was my best friend, my protector, my entire universe. And then cancer came and took her away in 8 brutal months that drained every penny we had and left me with nothing but grief and medical bills I had no idea how to pay. At the funeral, my mother's sister Patricia and her husband George approached me with expressions that I mistook for sympathy. I barely knew them. My mother had been estranged from her family for years over some conflict she never fully explained, just said that sometimes blood doesn't mean family and family doesn't always mean home. But standing there in my thrift store black dress, crying so hard I could barely breathe, I was desperate for any connection to the mother I'd just lost. When Aunt Patricia pulled me into a stiff, perfume-soaked hug and said, "You poor thing, you can't possibly stay in that apartment alone. Come live with us." It's what Catherine would have wanted. I believed her. I actually believed she cared. That despite years of distance, she was stepping up in my mother's absence to provide the family support I desperately needed. I was so naive, so stupid, so completely unprepared for what living with Patricia and George Morrison actually meant. Their house was beautiful, a sprawling 2-story colonial in the nicest suburb in town, with a manicured lawn, 3-car garage, and the kind of furniture that looked like it came from magazines. My cousin Madison, their 18-year-old daughter, had a bedroom that was bigger than the entire apartment I'd shared with my mother. Private bathroom, walk-in closet, a desk set up for her laptop and gaming system that probably cost more than my mother made in 3 months. When Patricia showed me to my room, I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't a room. It was a converted storage space off the laundry area, barely big enough for a twin bed and a small dresser.
No windows. No closet.
Just concrete walls, fluorescent lighting, and the constant rumble of the washing machine through the thin wall. "It's temporary," Patricia said quickly, seeing my face. "Just until we can figure out something more permanent. We weren't exactly expecting a house guest, you understand." I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. It was fine. It was shelter. It was more than I had. I should be grateful. That's what I told myself that first night, lying on a bed that smelled like mildew, crying silently so they wouldn't hear me through the walls. I should be grateful. They took me in when they didn't have to. They gave me a place to stay when I had nothing. The fact that it was a storage closet didn't matter. Beggars can't be choosers. That's the lie I told myself for 6 months while they systematically broke me down piece by piece until I barely recognized the girl I used to be. The rules started immediately. Patricia sat me down the morning after I moved in with a long list of expectations. I was expected to wake up at 5:30 every morning to start breakfast for the family. I was expected to keep the entire house clean, which meant vacuuming, dusting, bathroom cleaning, and laundry for all 4 people. I was expected to have dinner prepared by 6 o'clock every evening. I was expected to do the grocery shopping, using a detailed list Patricia provided, and if I bought the wrong brand or forgot anything, there would be consequences. "We're giving you a home, Sophia," Patricia said in that saccharine voice that made my skin crawl. "The least you can do is contribute to the household. You're not a child anymore. You're practically an adult. Adults pull their weight." I wanted to argue that I was still in high school, that I had classes and homework and a life outside of being their maid. But the words stuck in my throat, because where else would I go? What other options did I have? So I agreed. I took on the role of unpaid servant in exchange for a storage closet and whatever leftovers they didn't finish at dinner. And slowly, methodically, they convinced me that this was what I deserved. That I was lucky they'd taken me in at all. That I was a burden they were generously shouldering out of familial obligation. George was worse than Patricia in some ways. He never spoke to me directly, just barked orders like I was invisible. "Sophia, my shirts are wrinkled. Sophia, the lawn needs mowing. Sophia, take out the trash." Never please. Never thank you. Just commands delivered with the expectation of immediate compliance. Madison treated me like a particularly annoying insect she couldn't quite get rid of. She'd leave her room absolutely destroyed, clothes everywhere, makeup smeared on furniture, dishes piled up, and then complain to her mother that I wasn't cleaning it properly. She'd eat the lunch I'd packed for myself and laugh when I went hungry at school. She'd blast music late into the night, knowing the storage closet shared a wall with her room, then complain to Patricia that I looked tired and was probably staying up late being ungrateful instead of sleeping. The worst part wasn't the work or the disrespect or even the storage closet. The worst part was how they made me feel like I deserved it, like I was inherently less than them, like my mother had been less than them. Patricia would make comments about how my mother never could get her life together and how I was heading down the same path if I didn't shape up. George would sigh heavily whenever I entered a room, like my very presence was an inconvenience. Madison would invite friends over and introduce me as the charity case we're stuck with while I served them snacks I'd prepared. I started to believe them, started to internalize the message that I was worthless, burdensome, lucky to have even this much. My grades slipped because I was too exhausted to study after cooking and cleaning all evening. I stopped talking to friends because I was ashamed of where I lived and how I lived. I stopped looking in mirrors because I didn't recognize the hollow-eyed girl staring back. My mother had raised a confident, ambitious daughter who dreamed of college and career and making her proud. The Morrisons were systematically erasing that girl and replacing her with someone small and scared and convinced she didn't deserve better. 6 months into this nightmare, something shifted. I was cleaning out the garage, a task Patricia had assigned because she wanted to host a garden party and needed the space, when I found a box labeled Catherine's Things. My heart stopped. I hadn't seen any of my mother's belongings since moving in. Patricia had told me everything had been donated or thrown away because there was no room to store it. But here was a box, hidden behind old paint cans and Christmas decorations, with my mother's handwriting on the label. If you're reading this and you've ever felt invisible in your own life, ever been made to feel like you're a burden just for existing, hit that like button right now. Because what I found in that box didn't just change my circumstances. It shattered everything I thought I knew about my family, my mother, and the life I was supposed to inherit. My hands shook as I opened the box. Inside were photos of my mother as a young woman, smiling and beautiful and full of life I'd never seen in the tired, sick woman cancer had left behind. Her high school diploma, her wedding ring from a marriage I'd never known about, and at the bottom, sealed in a plastic bag to protect it from moisture and time, was an envelope with my name written across it in her careful script. To my darling Sophia. Open only after I'm gone. I love you more than words can express. Mom. I sat on the concrete garage floor and opened that letter with tears already streaming down my face. What I read in the next 10 minutes changed everything. My mother's letter was detailed and deliberate, written in the clear-minded moments between pain medication during her final weeks. She explained things I'd never known, revealed secrets I'd never suspected, and provided instructions that proved she'd been protecting me even from beyond the grave. My sweet Sophia, the letter began. If you're reading this, I'm gone.
And I'm so sorry.
Sorry I left you too soon. Sorry I couldn't see you graduate, get married, become the incredible woman I know you'll be. But I need you to know something crucial. You are not alone. You are not without resources. And you are not at anyone's mercy. She explained that when she was 22, before I was born, she'd started a small business designing websites for local companies. It was modest but successful, and over the years she'd built it into something substantial. When she got sick, she'd sold the business to a larger company for a significant sum. Additionally, her own mother, my grandmother who died before I was born, had left her property and investments that my mother had carefully maintained. I never told you about any of this, she wrote, because I wanted you to grow up normal. Not spoiled or entitled, but grounded and kind and grateful for what you had. I wanted you to understand the value of hard work and humility. But now that I'm gone, everything I built is yours. The house at 42, Riverside Drive is in your name, paid off completely, along with all furnishings. The savings account at First National Bank contains $270,000. The investment portfolio with Meyer Financial is worth approximately $180,000 and growing. All of it is legally yours, held in trust until your 18th birthday, at which point you'll have complete access. I read those words 3 times before my brain could process them. My mother had left me a house, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Financial security she'd worked her entire life to provide. And I'd been living in a storage closet, scrubbing toilets, believing I was broke and dependent on relatives who treated me like trash. The letter continued with devastating clarity. I need to tell you about Patricia. Your aunt and I were estranged for good reason. When our mother died and left us equal inheritance, Patricia contested the will. She claimed I was manipulating our sick mother, that I didn't deserve anything, that I was irresponsible and would waste it. She dragged me through a year of legal battles that cost tens of thousands in attorney fees. When she finally lost, when the judge ruled that our mother's will was sound and I was entitled to my half, Patricia told me I was dead to her, that she never wanted to see me again, that if I ever needed anything from her, I should remember this moment and know the answer would be no. My mother's handwriting got shakier here, like even remembering caused pain. I'm telling you this because I know Patricia. If something happens to me, she'll show up playing the concerned aunt. She'll offer help that comes with strings. She'll make you feel obligated and small and grateful. Don't believe her, Sophia. She doesn't care about you. She cares about accessing the inheritance she believes should have been hers. The letter included specific instructions. Contact attorney James Richardson at Richardson and Associates. He had all the legal documents, account information, and keys to the house. Don't tell Patricia or anyone in her family about the inheritance until I was safely away from them. Trust no one but Mr. Richardson until everything was secured in my name. You turn 18 in 3 months, my mother finished. On that birthday, you become legally independent and gain full access to everything I've left you. Until then, survive however you need to. But know this, my darling girl. You are not a burden. You are not worthless. You are not at anyone's mercy. You are my daughter, and I have made sure you'll never have to depend on people who don't value you. I love you eternally. Make me proud, Mom. I sat in that garage until my legs went numb, reading and rereading that letter until I'd memorized every word. My mother had protected me. Even dying, even suffering, she'd been 10 steps ahead, ensuring I'd be taken care of. And Patricia had known. Had to have known. That's why she'd hidden this box instead of giving it to me. That's why she'd convinced me I had nothing. That's why she'd worked so hard to make me feel worthless and dependent. She wanted me broken and grateful so that when I turned 18 and discovered the inheritance, I'd feel obligated to share it. To give her the money she believed she deserved. To make up for the will she'd lost years ago. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated exactly how strong my mother had raised me to be. And she'd given me 3 months of absolute hell that had burned away any sense of obligation I might have felt. I carefully put the letter back in its envelope, took the box, and carried it to my storage closet. That night, while the Morrisons ate dinner upstairs, I didn't join them. I told Patricia I wasn't feeling well, which she barely acknowledged beyond a annoyed sigh about having to eat store-bought bread instead of the homemade kind I usually made. In my closet, I reread the letter, made lists, and planned. I had 3 months until my 18th birthday. 3 months to survive without letting them know I knew. 3 months to play the role of grateful, submissive Sophia while secretly preparing my escape. The next morning, I called the attorney from a payphone at school, using change I'd saved from grocery shopping. James Richardson was exactly as my mother had described him. Kind, professional, and utterly unsurprised to hear from me. "Your mother was an extraordinary woman," he said. "She came to my office 6 weeks before she passed and made sure every detail was perfect. She knew you'd need protection, and she made sure you'd have it. When you turn 18, come to my office. Bring identification. We'll transfer everything into your active control, and you can start your new life." Those 3 months were the longest of my life. I continued playing servant, cooking and cleaning and accepting their cruelty with a smile that probably looked grateful, but was actually counting down days. I watched Madison get a new car for her birthday, a sleek BMW that cost more than most people make in a year, while I was still wearing clothes from the donation bin at school. I listened to George complain about property taxes and investment returns while I scrubbed his bathroom. I endured Patricia's comments about my mother's poor choices while folding her designer clothes. And every night, in my storage closet, I read my mother's letter and reminded myself that this was temporary. That survival wasn't surrender. That playing weak while growing strong was its own kind of power. I turned 18 on a Tuesday in March. The Morrisons didn't acknowledge it.
No cake.
No card. Not even a happy birthday at breakfast. I made them pancakes, cleaned up their mess, went to school, came home, made dinner, and waited until they were all asleep. Then I packed everything I owned into 2 garbage bags, left my key on the kitchen counter, and walked out of that house forever. I took a cab to a hotel using money I'd hidden from grocery shopping over months. The next morning, I met with Mr. Richardson. He handed me folders of documents, bank statements, property deeds, investment summaries, walked me through every detail of what my mother had left me. By noon, I had full legal access to everything. The house, the money, the freedom. If you're still watching, if you need to see how this ends, hit that subscribe button because what happened when the Morrisons realized I was gone is absolutely insane. And what I did with the power my mother gave me will restore your faith in karma. The house at 42 Riverside Drive was beautiful. A 3-bedroom craftsman with original hardwood floors, a renovated kitchen, a backyard with fruit trees, and enough space to finally breathe. It had been maintained by a property management company my mother had hired, kept clean and ready for the day I'd claim it. I walked through rooms that were legally mine, sat on furniture my mother had chosen, and cried harder than I had since her funeral. Not from sadness. From relief. From gratitude. From the overwhelming realization that even in death, my mother was still taking care of me. Still making sure I'd be okay. Still proving that real love doesn't end just because a heart stops beating. I enrolled in online classes to finish high school. Used some of the inheritance to hire a tutor who helped me catch up on everything I'd missed while playing maid. Started therapy with Dr. Ellen Crawford to process the trauma of losing my mother and the abuse I'd endured with the Morrisons. Slowly, carefully, I began rebuilding the girl they'd tried to destroy. For the first month, the Morrisons didn't contact me at all. I'd simply vanished from their lives the same way I'd existed in their home. Invisibly. It wasn't until Patricia apparently needed something that she remembered I existed. The call came at 8 in the morning, 6 weeks after I'd left. I saw her name on my new phone and almost didn't answer. But curiosity, and maybe a small desire to hear her panic, made me pick up. "Sophia? Oh, thank God. Where have you been? You just disappeared. We've been worried sick." The lie was so blatant I almost laughed. "Have you?" I asked, voice completely calm.
Yes.
"You just left without a word. No note, no explanation. George wanted to file a missing persons report, but I said you were probably just being dramatic." Teenagers, you know? The casual dismissal of my departure, the complete lack of understanding about why I might have left, was so perfectly Patricia, I felt nothing.
No anger. No hate.
Just cold observation. Why are you calling, Patricia? There was a pause. Then her tone changed, became slightly harder. Well, since you asked, we need to discuss your mother's estate. There are some documents that need your signature. Legal things. It's complicated but important. When can you come by the house? There it was. The real reason for the call. She'd somehow found out about the inheritance, probably through her own attorney inquiries, and was already planning how to get her hands on it. I'm not coming to the house, Patricia. If you need to discuss legal matters, contact my attorney, James Richardson at Richardson and Associates. He handles all my affairs. Another pause, longer this time. Your attorney? Sophia, what are you talking about? You don't have an attorney. You're just a kid.
I'm 18.
I'm legally an adult. And yes, I have an attorney. The same one my mother used. He has all the documentation regarding her estate and my inheritance. Everything is already settled, and in my name. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Your inheritance? Sophia, I think there's been some confusion. Your mother didn't leave an estate. She died with medical debt, and nothing else. I don't know who's been telling you otherwise, but... Stop lying, Patricia. I found Mom's letter. I know about the house, the accounts, the investments. I know she left everything to me, and I know you hid her belongings, so I wouldn't find out. The silence on the other end was deafening. When she spoke again, her voice had lost all pretense of concern. That money should have been mine. My mother's will was contested for good reason. Catherine manipulated her. The inheritance should have been split differently. If you have any decency, any family loyalty, you'll recognize that and share what you've been given. I smiled, even though she couldn't see me. Family loyalty? That's interesting coming from you. Tell me, Patricia, did family loyalty make you put me in a storage closet? Did family loyalty make you treat me like an unpaid servant? Did family loyalty make you convince me I was worthless and lucky to have even that much? You were provided for. We gave you shelter and food, and you gave me hell. You took advantage of a grieving teenager who had nowhere else to go. You isolated me, degraded me, and tried to break me down so thoroughly that I'd be grateful for crumbs. And you did it all because you were planning this exact moment. The moment when you'd guilt me into giving you money you think you deserve. Patricia's voice turned vicious. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we did for you, we took you in when we didn't have to. We fed you, housed you, treated you like family. And this is how you repay us. You treated me like a slave, not family. But thank you for teaching me an important lesson. You taught me that blood doesn't mean loyalty. That the people who claim they're helping you are sometimes the ones hurting you most. And that I should never, ever feel obligated to people who made me feel worthless. I hung up before she could respond. 3 months later, the calls started again. But this time they weren't from Patricia. They were from George. And his tone wasn't demanding. It was desperate. Sophia, I need to speak with you. It's urgent. Please, just hear me out. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop. Neutral territory.
Public.
Safe. He looked terrible. Older somehow, with shadows under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. He ordered coffee, he didn't drink, and spent 5 minutes not quite looking at me before finally speaking. I lost my job. The company downsized, and I was part of the cut. We're behind on the mortgage. Medical bills are piling up. Patricia's mother needs surgery we can't afford. Madison's college tuition is due, and we don't have it. We're drowning, Sophia. I sip my coffee, waiting. I know we didn't treat you well. I know that. Patricia knows that too, though she won't admit it. We took advantage of your situation, and that was wrong. But you're family. And family helps each other, right? We need a loan. Just temporary. Just enough to get back on our feet. We'll pay you back. The audacity would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. A loan. I repeated slowly. You want me to give you money, not give.
Loan.
We'll sign paperwork. Make it official. Pay you back with interest. I leaned back, studying this man who'd treated me like furniture for 6 months, who'd never said thank you or please or acknowledged me as a human being, who'd watched his wife destroy my self-worth and said nothing. George, I want you to remember something. Remember the storage closet. Remember the 5:30 wake-ups. Remember how you spoke to me, or rather didn't speak to me, just barked orders like I was your servant. Remember how Madison introduced me to her friends as a charity case. Remember how Patricia told me repeatedly that my mother was a failure and I was heading down the same path. Remember all of it. And then I want you to understand something very clearly. I set down my coffee cup. I don't owe you anything. Not help. Not money. Not even this conversation. You had months to treat me with basic human decency, and you chose cruelty instead. You could have been family, real family, and instead you were employers who didn't even pay me.
So no, George.
I won't be giving you a loan. I won't be giving you anything except the exact same consideration you gave me, which is nothing. He started to argue, to plead, to make promises about how they'd changed and learned and would do better. But I stood up, grabbed my purse, and delivered the line I'd been preparing since the day I found my mother's letter. You taught me that everyone needs to take care of what's theirs. You told me that adults pull their weight, that people who don't contribute don't deserve help. Well, I'm taking care of what's mine now, and you're not mine to take care of. You never treated me like I was yours when I needed you. So don't expect me to treat you like you're mine now that you need me. Drop a comment telling me if you think I was too cold or if the Morrisons got exactly what they deserved. Because the aftermath of this confrontation revealed things about family, justice, and karma that will make you see your own relationships differently. I walked away from that coffee shop and never looked back. The Morrisons eventually lost their house, had to downsize significantly. Madison had to transfer to a state school instead of the private university she'd been accepted to. Patricia got a retail job, which I'm sure she found humiliating given how she treated me for doing manual labor. George found work eventually, but nothing close to what he'd had before. I heard all this through mutual acquaintances, people who remembered I'd lived with them briefly, and thought I'd want updates. I didn't. Their struggles weren't my entertainment. Their karma wasn't my victory. My victory was the life I built without them. I finished high school with honors. Got accepted to a prestigious university with a full scholarship I didn't technically need, but applied for anyway because I'd earned it. Studied business and psychology, fascinated by what makes people cruel and what makes people kind. Used my inheritance wisely, investing most of it while using some to travel, to learn, to become the woman my mother had believed I could be. I started a nonprofit in my mother's name, providing housing assistance to teenagers aging out of foster care or escaping abusive family situations. Kids like I'd been. Kids who needed someone to see them and value them and prove that their circumstances didn't define their worth. The organization grew. We housed dozens of teenagers, helped them finish school, connected them with resources, gave them the support system I'd almost lost when my mother died. And every single kid who came through our program heard my story. Not for pity or sympathy, but so they'd know that surviving abuse isn't weakness, that choosing yourself isn't selfish, that walking away from people who hurt you isn't running away. It's running toward the life you deserve. 5 years after I left the Morrisons, I received a letter. Not from Patricia or George. From Madison. It was long and rambling, clearly written during some kind of emotional breakthrough. She apologized for how she'd treated me. Explained that her parents had taught her that people were valuable based on their wealth and status. That she'd been a spoiled brat who thought she was better than everyone. That watching her family lose everything had been a wake-up call about privilege and entitlement and the cruelty she'd been capable of. I don't expect forgiveness, she wrote. I don't even deserve a response. But I needed you to know that you were right. About everything. And I'm sorry. So deeply, truly sorry. I read the letter once. Put it in a folder with other correspondence I kept but didn't respond to. Because Madison's growth and realization didn't require my validation. Her apology didn't need my forgiveness to be meaningful. She was learning the lessons her parents' cruelty had taught her. That was between her and her own conscience. My peace didn't depend on whether she'd changed. It depended on me choosing every single day to protect what my mother had given me. Not just money or property, but the knowledge that I was loved, that I was valuable, that I was worth fighting for even when the people around me couldn't see it. 10 years after my mother's death, I stood in the house at 42, Riverside Drive, now beautifully renovated and expanded to include office space for my nonprofit. The backyard where my mother had imagined me playing was now a garden where teenagers from the program grew vegetables and learned that nurturing living things could help heal your own broken places. I was 30 years old, successful,
Happy.
surrounded by chosen family rather than blood relatives who'd proven family meant nothing without love and respect to back it up. And sometimes, when the sun hit the hardwood floors just right, I swear I could feel my mother there, proud of who I'd become, satisfied that her sacrifice and planning had given me exactly what she'd intended. Freedom, security, the power to choose who got access to me and who got left behind. The Morrisons never contacted me again after George's failed attempt at getting a loan. I heard through occasional updates that they'd stabilized somewhat. Not thriving, but surviving. Patricia apparently told people that I'd stolen money that was rightfully hers, that I was ungrateful and spiteful, that I'd always been troubled. The lies didn't touch me. Let her rewrite history to make herself the victim. I knew the truth. So did my mother. And that was enough. The real plot twist wasn't that I discovered an inheritance. Wasn't that I escaped an abusive situation. Wasn't even that the family who'd treated me like garbage ended up facing consequences for their cruelty. The real twist was that none of it mattered to my happiness. My joy didn't come from their suffering. It came from honoring my mother's legacy, from helping kids who reminded me of my younger self, from building something meaningful with the resources she'd left me, from choosing kindness even after experiencing cruelty, from knowing that the best revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's building a life so fulfilling that their presence or absence becomes irrelevant. My name is Sophia Brown. My mother died and left me a fortune I didn't know existed. My aunt and uncle treated me like a servant while hiding the inheritance they thought should be theirs. And when I discovered the truth, I didn't just take the money and run. I built an empire of compassion on the foundation my mother had laid. I helped kids who needed someone to believe in them. I proved that surviving abuse doesn't mean you become abusive. That being hurt doesn't give you permission to hurt others. That the most powerful thing you can do after someone treats you like you're worthless is become someone so valuable, so essential, so genuinely good that their opinion stops mattering entirely. The Morrisons taught me what I didn't want to be. My mother taught me what I could become. And the teenagers I help every day teach me that the cycle of cruelty only continues if we let it. That we can choose differently. Be better. Break the pattern. That's my mother's real inheritance. Not the money or the house or the financial security, but the understanding that love isn't about obligation or blood or debt. It's about choosing to show up, to value people, to treat them with dignity, even when it's inconvenient. The Morrisons never learned that lesson, but I did. And every day I spend living differently than they taught me is its own kind of victory. Welcome to my truth, where the silent inheritance my mother left wasn't silent at all. It was a roar, a declaration, a promise that her daughter would not just survive, but thrive. And that anyone who tried to make me small would eventually understand exactly how wrong they were about who I could become.